That's so comforting. Won't choose, you want me. Take my hand and know me better. I know you love me. That's so comforting. Won't choose, you want me. Take my hand and know me better. I know you love me. That's so comforting. But we are stuck except you take my hand and know me better. Hey, know me better, love me better. Hey, take me better, love me better. It's the Transformational Parenting Show with Untitled Chapter.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the program, Transformational Parenting. My name is Mute Olori. I hope, and I really do hope, that you've been learning a lot from this program, because parenting in the 21st century has been very challenging for a whole lot of people. And it's not only in Nigeria, it's not only an African thing, all over the world. People are just finding it very difficult to understand, what do they call them? The Generation Z children, the millennials, whatever you call them. We're trying to look for ways to explain the children of this generation and parenting them in this time. Like I said somewhere, I said they've tested and contested everything we know about parenting. So you cannot parent from your default. You cannot say, this is the way I was brought up. You can only mention it. But honestly, it can't work now. So this program, Transformational Parenting, is bridging that gap between you and your children, helping you to foster a kind of relationship and connection that will help you understand them, help them understand you, and see how you can both connect to impact first your family and then impact society. Why? Because society is the bedrock of the family. If we can't get it right with the family, we cannot get it right with society. So I want to say a very big welcome to the program again. Today we're going to be looking at the role of grandparents in parenting. Yes, you have a role to see how you can connect your children to your parents. Am I shaking some tables? I'll take a short break. When I come back, you will be meeting my guest, and we'll chronicle a bit of his life and talk about the role of the grandparents in modeling and forming the personality he has become today. Please don't go away.
It's the Transformational Parenting Show with Mute Olori.
All right, welcome back. It's still the Transformational Parenting Show on. And my name is Mute Olori, your parenting coach. So today we're talking about the role of grandparents in parenting. What role do they have to play? What influence do they have on our style of parenting? Many have grown with a form of default, that is not so pleasant. And they'll say, my parents caused this, my parents caused that. So why do I want them in the lives of my children? My guest is Engineer Gishon Ogboluija. And together we're going to be talking about these issues. But first of all, let me begin, by introducing him in a way that intrigues me. He's an author of the book Serial Survivor, a man with 9 lives. When I heard the book at first, the man with like 9 lives. The first thing that came to my mind is the cats. It's the only one we know, that the cats with 9 lives. And reading through your books, I see that you've been through a lot and you've been able to survive quite a lot. So what actually motivated you in writing this book?
Okay, thank you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to Nigerians. Now, I wrote this book not because I set out to write the book. It came out of a normal thing that happens in my family at the beginning of every year. So on the first day of the year 2019, we sat around the table, each person setting goals, what he's supposed to do, what he or she will do for the year. And when it got to my turn, they asked me, what are you going to do? I just, without thinking, said I was going to write a book. Then there was a problem. What are you going to write on? Eventually, one of my kids told me, I think you should write about your life because you've had quite an interesting life. So that was how Serial Survivor, the writing of Serial Survivor came about. But Serial Survivor itself, you know, is because of the fact of the several things that have happened to me. In fact, I should have died long time ago. I should have died like 9 times over. But I have survived all of them. I have survived 2 armed robbery incidents in my house. I have survived 2 carjacks. I have survived 1 kidnap attempt. And to crown it all, I survived an assassination attempt. And all were violent things. And because I survived them, it looks as if serially, God is just tiding me over all these things. That's why I call the book Serial Survival.
Wow. Well, in one of the chapters, you talked about your childhood.
Yes.
Tell me more.
Well, I've had quite an interesting childhood. I was born in Ataba in Rivers State, in Andoni local government area in Rivers State. But my father was a teacher. So, you know, in those days, it's itinerant. The life of teachers was very itinerant. So they moved from place to place. But eventually, I moved to Ecom in Cross River State, where I began to know myself. The stories I began to tell in this book is from my time in Ecom, because that was when I was between 4 and 5. I could still remember things that happened then. So I have had issues with growing up, seeing my mother and the relationship she had with my father, which I'm not proud to say it. It's not what I will expect my child to have with the husband, you know. And I grew up under this circumstance. But eventually, I found myself back in Ataba, where I had to live with my mother and my grandmother. I think this is where you come in.
But let's go back a little bit to your mother. She was like a child.
Yes, my mother was actually a baby when she had me. So it's like babies having babies. My mother was married, I think, about the age of 14, because she had me at 16. So this is the kind of thing that you know, rotated around me, and the kind of thing that I don't want to happen to my own children.
How did that affect you? I mean, 14, quite young, and for anyone, you say the child should be in school or under the care of the parents.
True.
But here is this young girl. Was it a willful thing? I'm sure you must have spoken to her, and she kind of relate her story to you. So,
in fact, the story is like this. You know, she was attending school in one other community called Ngo, which is our local government headquarters. Of none of the times she came back, my father was teaching in my own community called Ataba. So, on one of the times she came back from school, you know, then teachers were the power people of society.
Teachers and farmers were the most,
so,
powerful, yeah.
So he just saw her and said, "You, this girl, I'm going to marry you." That was all the courtship. By the next time she was coming back from holiday, they had already organized and arranged the marriage, and everybody knew about the marriage, apart from the major person in the marriage.
Apart from her,
was my mother,
that is supposed to be married.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So these are some of the things that shouldn't be happening, especially in today's Nigeria.
Unfortunately, it's still happening in this time and age that we are talking about. And you can imagine a child who needs to be parented, now parenting.
People should be mentally prepared to go into serious things like marriage. It's not something you force a baby to go into marrying. So when I hear, even these days, people marrying at the age of 13, 14, 17, I'm scared for them.
You said something that really got me interested, that people should be mentally prepared before they go into a serious thing as marriage, and a more serious thing like childbearing. And more serious is the nurturing and raising of another human being. So if you're not mentally stable to go through these 2 stages, then you don't need to even get to the extent of being a parent. So anybody being put into that box, into that situation, needs to be really, really, really stable. Now, let's talk about the stage where you now went, your mom and you now had to go and live with your grandmother. What was that period for you?
Well, you know, in the time we grew up, the larger family, the extended family was like some kind of safety net. And this extended family includes your mother, your grandmother, your aunties, your grand aunties, all of them. We all lived together in a homestead. That was how we lived those days in my village. Now, for me, it was important that I lived in that kind of situation, because unfortunately, again, my father and my mother broke up when I was 7. And without the safety net of my grandmother, it would have been a big disaster. Because, you know, when we were growing up, the grandparents were what today we have they perform the duty that we have today, you know, ceded to house girls and house. But unfortunately, the house helps cannot do it as much as the grandparents, because the grandmother, you know, has, you know, this filial relationship with the child. If they had not been there, it would have been very, very difficult for my mother as a young child of about 22, you know, 22, 24, who had been divorced.
You know, sometimes when we hear these stories, we think we associate them with a particular area of our country. But if you really check, it seemed to be spread everywhere. So I guess it must have been very traumatic for you growing up until you found that environment, you know, that helped you to stabilize a bit. Wow, I'm sure that you've been listening and savoring and trying to, you know, imagine what my guest must have gone through, right? Well, I'll take a short break now. When I come back, we'll be looking at the role of grandparents in parenting in this day and time. What role and how helpful can they be in our parenting? Please don't go away. All right, you're welcome back. It's still the Transformational Parenting, and wow, I really don't want to put myself in your shoes, but that's the reality of a lot of young people, people who grew up in your time and are now parenting.
Yeah.
And it's affecting their style of parenting, because they're trying to give what they didn't have. And you can't actually give what you don't have, except by the renewing of your mind, transforming yourself, taking it from what default and saying, look, I want to make something different in my parenting, in raising my children. And I see from the things, my interaction with you, that you've done a lot to see that the way you were raised did not affect your style of parenting. Now, let's talk about grandparents, which is something that you enjoyed. Not only grandparents, but great-grandparents. In this age and time, I've had cause to mentor and coach a lot of parents. And one thing they say to me, I can never allow my parents to have a say in the way I raise my children. Some have gone to the extent of disassociating their children from the grandparents. But I also have read and heard testimonies of great men who say, my grandparents made me who I am today. Now let's talk about that. For those who really don't think that grandparents have a role to play, how important are they in parenting, especially in this age and time?
Okay, thank you for this. I want to answer this question with a personal experience, because as I said, I have been a child, and now I'm a father. I don't know why or what people who said they don't think there's a role for their grandparents in bringing up their children. I don't know what they have passed through. It's probably that something in their past will be responsible for the decisions that they are taking. But that decision, if I were them, I will need to review it. It needs reviewing. The good thing I had was that, number one, I had luck with my children, because I can proudly say my children have all turned out well. How did this happen? Number one, my wife as a teacher had time to spend with the children. And when she was not available, my mother was at home. Not only my mother, my grandmother. This is one area where I give kudos to my wife, because very few women, as you have said, will even want their children to influence their parents, to influence the bringing up of their children. Not to talk about living with their mother-in-law and their grandmother-in-law. As I speak, these two of my parents have lived with me and my wife for the past 17 years. So, if you look at society now, society is losing a lot of things. Culture is dying. Children don't know how to speak the language. I'm guilty. I don't speak my language to my children. But each time my children are in the presence of my mother or my grandmother, they are forced to listen to the language, even if they don't understand. Since they don't have any other option,
they have
to learn. You understand? So things like how to behave in society, how to respect elders, things like this. It is only the older people that will be able to teach the young people, and not people of my generation. People of my generation were too concerned with money, politics, business, and we abandon the children to other people. You are lucky if those other people are your blood, if they are related to you. But when those other people are people you hire and bring from here and there to take care of your children, you will not know what they will be seeding into your children. This is where the danger is.
So no matter how bad it is, blood is blood.
Blood is blood.
So apart from the fact that they are available as custodians of culture, tradition, and they have that influence of how things should be done properly, what else do you think the role of grandparents can be in the lives of children?
I think the grandparents they have a role of stabilizing behavior in children. They have a role of stabilizing behavior in children. Because they lived in another era. They have the opportunity and the ability, to make the children imbibe. Like we were talking about millennials here, we are talking about Gen Z people, but it's not everything in the millennials' life or in the Gen Z's life that is good. It's not everything that is bad. Now, if you have the opportunity to take the best from three worlds, I think you'll be a better person. So as Gen Z, you take maybe all these techie things and stuff. As millennials, you take all these business acumen and things like that. But you go back also to the baby boomers.
That's our generation.
Yes, like us. And then there are things we excel in, which the children can use. But if you want to say it's only my way or the highway, you will not get anything.
So let's look at those who say, I can't take it. They've been hurt. They've been bruised. Probably the way the parents related to them. You know, I would say mine because for me, the way my parents brought me up and the way I see them with my children, they're totally different. So there are times that I would say something and I would say, my mom is like this. My children can't understand what I'm saying because grandma is the sweetest woman in the whole wide world. And grandma was so hard-fisted with me. But with my children, there's so much that she let go. I believe that as a parent, what you learn, your children are your learning parts. And then when you get to the grandchildren, you begin to practice the things that you have learned along the way, the falls, the victories, and you know better on how to bring up the grandchildren. So for someone who is adamant or being hurt, what will you say to that person? Why would you want him or her to make a U-turn and make amends with their parents so that the children can benefit from the wealth of experience and the things we have mentioned that grandparents can bring on board? Okay,
I would start by quoting something that Mahatma Gandhi said, you know, because all these things is based on being hurt, being angry with your parents and so on. But Mahatma Gandhi said that anger is an acid that corrodes the container more than anything it is poured on. You understand? So by allowing that animosity to sit and sift in you, you are depriving your children about the things they could possibly learn. If you want to remove your parents entirely from the bringing up of your children, the things, like I said, the things of their generation, which can be seeded into them, they will lose it. I give you an example. My daughter is 17. She lived across 4 generations because she lived with herself. She lived with her mother. She lived with my mother, and she lived with my grandmother. She is quite a little bit, maybe, let me say, smarter than people who did not have that kind of. So I believe that innately, without knowing, she's getting wisdom from all these sources. Yes. So when you restrict your children to only yourself and your wife, the thing is that the cross-generational influence they will have, the influence, the knowledge that will come across generations and eras to them, you will make them lose it. So it is important that, irrespective of what our parents have done to us, however they have wronged us, you know, we should find a way to throw away this acid from inside us so it doesn't corrode us, because, as I said before, it eats you more than it eats them, and your children will not lose physically, but in terms of what they could get, you know, from across the generations.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much, Engineer Geshon Ogunlueje. Ogbulija.
I don't blame
All right. Have mercy on me. Forgive me. All right. So I'm really, really grateful because I'm a product, or rather, I'll say my children are a product of what you're talking about, of grandparents' influence in their lives. And I know the benefits of having my mom around me when I was raising my children. No one could have done it better than her. And so I want to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to every mother and every grandmother that is doing everything, and grandfathers that is doing everything to impact and be in the lives of their grandchildren. After all, we're a product of the influence that we have. So who is in your circle of influence? I'll leave you with that question. And whatever you do, please do not deprive your children, who are the joy of grandparenting, from connecting and enjoying it. I personally look forward, I dream every day of being in the lives of my grandchildren. What are your dreams? Begin by practicing it, by allowing your children to be in the lives of their grandparents. My name is Mute Olori. I hope you've learned something from this edition. You can reach us on all our social media platforms. Please connect so that you can correct. Bye-bye.
I know you love me, that's so comforting. Won't choose you, want me, take my hand and know me better. I know you love me, that's so comforting. Won't choose you, want me, take my hand.